The 2025 class for Auburn football continues to build. Currently, as of this video, we are at commit number 11, a new one to discuss on the defensive front. Let's talk about who that is and, of course, what it means for Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers. War Eagle Auburn family and a special War Eagle, and welcome to those of you that consider yourselves part of the E2C Network family. Thank you so much for joining us. Whether you are live, whether you're on the replay, we appreciate you being here and hanging out with us to spend some time being a part of the best little family within the Auburn family. For today's reaction live stream, we have to react to some news that dropped last night. That's 2 days in a row on the recruiting or transfer portal front that we're discussing some news for Auburn sports of some sort. Today, we are discussing a new 2025 commitment for the Auburn Tigers, a defensive back by way of Fort Walton Beach, Florida. We have Dante Core committing to the Auburn 2025 class, effectively making him, at the time of his commitment, the number 11 commit in the class. Obviously, those numbers have wavered and changed with decommitments and commitments that have gone up and down, as it does for every class. But as of right now, we are talking about him in the respect of being the number 11 overall commit to this 2025 class. We have a lot to dive into, as typical with these reaction live streams for commitments. We want to talk about some facts about him that you need to know. We want to talk about if there's any stats out there we can glean from him. Other information that may be important for you to know about him. And then, of course, we want to talk about what it means. What does it mean for Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers? We can talk about it in terms of when and how often, how early he might play, where he would fit into a prospective depth chart, and then obviously the implications, what it means for the rest of the 2025 class, because every commitment obviously means something for the next ones that may or may not be coming. So that's what's on the table for you. We'd love for you to jump in here. If you're watching live, let us know that you're here. Anybody can do this, actually. Smash the like button if you feel like we've earned it. And of course, let us know that you're here if you're watching live or on the replay. We also want to take any comments and questions, topics from this commitment about this particular topic that you might have on hand while on the live portion as well. So opening discussions for me. Now, I did take a little bit of a vacation, so I may have missed a commitment or decommitment, but I don't believe I did, because the last one that I remember was offensive tackle Carday Smith, who we also did a video about, and you should go check that out as well. So here we are talking about the defensive side of the ball yet again, which has been a heavy emphasis early in the 2025 class and continues to be the case as well here with a defensive back. Now, most people will tell you that Dante Core is going to be a cornerback. And if you look at measurables, you're probably going to agree with that. So let me give you those so we can talk about it a little bit. Depending on what service you look at, who you prefer, you're going to find a varying range of measurables, especially on height. He is anywhere from 5'11.5" to 6'1". So I feel like we can comfortably say 6 foot right here for his height, roughly 165 pounds. So when you compare height and weight, typically that puts you in the range of a cornerback position when you are a defensive player. It's not always the case. We've seen people transfer over. And it's in fact why when we talk about them, we specifically at least reference them as a DB, because we know that's what they're going to play. And a lot of these guys sometimes even come in as athletes and maybe even switch further from that. But we can speculate, and the discussion seems to be around him being a cornerback for Auburn football when he eventually signs, hopefully, and arrives here to play for the Tigers. As I mentioned, he comes from Fort Walton Beach, Florida. This may be a hot take for some of y'all, and maybe I feel like I know some Fort Walton Beach people who agree with this. That's basically like Alabama. A lot of people tell you the panhandle of Florida, which is where this is basically Alabama, especially Fort Walton Beach, Florida, Pensacola. It basically just feels like it's Alabama. So to me, it's kind of interesting just to think about that. And I sometimes get it confused. But anyway, it comes from Fort Walton Beach. Always good to go into the state of Florida, no matter where they are in the state, and get guys out of there. Often, we'll get to that there. We'll talk about the, where he comes from and the implications for the recruiting class and things like that. So when you look at this guy, if you care about stars, we always tell you guys here, don't put too much emphasis on the star that they come in with. What do they leave with? That's the most important thing. Here is what I know. This guy was offered by Auburn and is getting the Wesley McGriff stamp of approval. Now, Wesley McGriff, for those of you that don't know, one of our defensive back coaches. We have two of those, and they have split the duties. It happens a lot these days. He specifically has done the cornerback sides, which falls right here in the purview of having Dante Core, a perceived cornerback. Wesley McGriff has been at Auburn a lot and for a while too, and has put some great defensive backs into the NFL. So if he sees the talent, and if you are someone that looks at the 3-star stats and goes, I don't know about this, you might want to check yourself, because Wesley McGriff has a good eye for talent, not just finding them, but getting them to where they need to be respected and find their way onto NFL rosters, whether they are drafted, find themselves free agency deals, and then find themselves a permanent or somewhat long-term home in the NFL. So that is all the stamp of approval that I frankly need as of this moment. Another cool little storyline, if you just read around to some of the different news stories out there, supposedly he visited for a day, supposedly was ready to commit at the time, did not pull the trigger, so to speak, there and decide to make that commitment official. But he obviously felt that love and that connection. And I think some of his quotes from some of the media sites out there were like, it just felt right for me personally. You hear the word home a lot thrown around on that. So with Dante Core, I think that's one of those things. It gets in your blood, and you're just like, I can't let it go. I just got to make this fit right. Got a lot of interest from, well, at least the perception seems to be that he was getting a lot of interest from bigger and bigger programs as time went on. I believe he was committed to South Florida for a little bit of time, which makes sense. That is quite a haul from Fort Walton to down to South Florida, which is the Miami-ish area, the South Florida region. This will be much closer to home for him. So a lot of those things, you can understand why this guy would make a decision, why he would want to make the commitment, maybe want to just see what else is out there. But then the itch just finally became too strong, and he wants to be an Auburn Tiger. Obviously, a long way to go till early signing day, or whatever signing day is officially going to be these days. They might as well just call it in December at this point. And we'll see if he signs on the dotted line. But those are some facts and stats. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you see this a lot with guys from skill positions such as cornerbacks, safeties, wide receivers, maybe in running backs as well, that they run track. It seems to be the case here as well. I always it's not that you can't be a great football player if you don't run track or do that in some aspect, but I love seeing that as part of their resume, because obviously it takes some very specialized skills depending on what you do, whether you're a sprinter, you're a high jumper, or a combination of all those things. Maybe you're a what I like to call an athlon elite. That's a really weird way of saying that. But if you run a triathlon, decathlon, a heptathlon, if you compete in running, jumping, throwing, all these things, it just takes a very athletic, skilled person. So whatever he competes in on track and field, it's good to know that he has that as part of his resume, which is not uncommon for a lot of high schoolers to do. All right, so that's information on Dante Core, specifically storyline facts around his commitment. Let's talk a little bit about what are the implications for Auburn football. And we could talk about this in a variety of different aspects. Let's first start talking about numbers. Where are we at with the 2025 class, and what does it inform for the rest of the class, at least that we can guesstimate our best guess moving forward at his position and for the class as a whole? If you look at the different sites, you will see that there are 11 total commitments as of the time of his. And he is the second, or at least at the time, one of two commits that are listed at cornerback. Again, I always like to talk about these guys as DB, because I feel like we spend all these times putting these guys into especially like in the defensive back world, into these pigeonholed positions, and then they get there, their bodies change, they get into a workout regime and program in a football program, and they just things change. So Devin Williams is your other cornerback who has been committed to the Tigers since February. So 2 guys. So if you like to think about it that way, if in theory you want to fill every single spot every year that you need to put out there on the field, both of the boundary cornerbacks have been filled for the Tigers. One, Devin Williams, and now Dante Core. So that's certainly one way to look at it if you'd like to. Where is he from? We talked about Fort Walton Beach, Florida. When we look at recruiting, the 2 biggest important states are obviously your home state of Alabama. You can make the argument that this is basically Alabama. Georgia is right there as well, but not to be forgotten, and just as important in some ways, is the state of Florida. It doesn't matter where you get them from, but we always talk about that central to lower Florida having so much talent down there. This is obviously from the northern panhandle. It doesn't really matter though. Making sure you take care of the state of Florida when you can, especially guys that maybe are on that panhandle side closer to Alabama, basically being Alabama, as I've already talked about. That's a huge, huge thing right there. So think about it from that aspect. And I believe he is the first from the state of Florida, if I'm not mistaken, just doing or the only one, I guess I should say at this point, with decommitments and things like that. Yes, it looks like he's the only one from the state of Florida. And if you look across as of this time, the recruiting class, you'll see Georgia, Florida, of course, Alabama, Mississippi, North Carolina represented. So all of those big states, your closest one, your core ones, and even those far-reaching ones are already starting to be represented in this class, which is a really good look for the Tigers. What does it mean for the future? Is he going to play? Well, of course, we hope he's going to play. How quickly can he find playing time? With these guys, it's always encouraging because they find themselves listed as an athlete a lot, which means you often find them as gunners or part of the special teams play early on. So you might see them a lot. Now, will he play at cornerback early and often? If you look at prospectively where the depth chart, where the roster is at right now and where it might be, you're going to see names like Kayan Lee, who is a sophomore. So he should be here still. So that's one spot that'll probably lock down. I don't see him losing that spot anytime soon. Keontae Scott is your other cornerback right now, who is a senior, will be gone. I don't believe he has any more eligibility. So that's effectively a spot opened up right there. But what you have to remember is that the Tigers have brought in someone like Antonio Kite from Alabama this past year, who will probably be pushing for playing time altogether and probably would fill into that spot automatically, given the talent that we believe that he is. You've also got J.C. Hart, other people that play different positions. Tyler Scott left, I believe, actually. I get those a little bit confused sometimes. Jay Crawford, who's here. So there are other players that potentially could vie for playing time. All this to say, given the fact that you're already bringing in a second one, and there's probably going to be maybe another one out there, I would not expect him to play right away, which is not, in terms of significant playing time, which is not unheard of, right? So that shouldn't be super shocking, super unheard of for a lot of you out there to see a high school player come in and not start right away. Not everybody can be a Cam Coleman. So that's just how it goes. But it doesn't mean you can't come in, earn respect, and earn that playing time and get out there before it's all said and done. Kayan Lee did it this last year and found his way into some playing time in his first year for the Tigers, which was super encouraging to see. So we'll watch Dante Core, Devin Williams as well, and see what they can do. What does this mean for the rest of the class? Will we take another? It feels like they always take multiple defensive backs. Not to say that it will be a straight cornerback. You may see someone who's listed as an athlete that's probably going to play a defensive back, and they will fill them into the slot where they need to be. My best guess is we ain't done yet. When you're losing Keontae Scott, who knows who else might leave in the transfer portal era. I would not be shocked if we took another one and maybe even another one after that, because obviously you need to continue to fill your depth chart out so that you have plenty of options in this crazy, crazy world that we're living in. So that is your facts. That is your We didn't get to any stats, but implications, what it meant for Hugh Freeze, the Auburn Tigers, based off of this commitment for the class and going forward in the depth chart. I can take any final comments or questions you might have live. A couple of reminders for you as you're thinking, if you want to put in any of those, that tonight, we are doing this on a Sunday afternoon. Tonight, do not miss it. Episode 78 of the Auburn Experience podcast is going to be performed live. You need to be there at 9 Eastern time. Do not miss it. It's going to be a good one. Always is, but of course, this one's just going to be just as much fun with Austin and myself, the main show of everything that we do. Keep in mind that this Wednesday we'll also have Auburn Family Night, where we'll talk about anything and everything Auburn. That'll be at 8 p.m. here on YouTube, and we'll broadcast it to other places. But YouTube is where you want to be. So we have talked about all those different things that you need to know. Your number 11 at the time of his commitment in this class, and that being Dante Core. Happy to have him. Hopefully we will be talking about him signing on signing day, whichever day that's going to be, early or otherwise, and no shenanigans will happen going forward. Welcome to the class. Welcome to Auburn, and super excited to see so many new faces joining the class, especially on the defensive side of the ball, even more early than it seems like they do sometimes. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being here, hanging out with me. Until I talk to you again, War Eagle.